The Deep Space Sensor Station floated quietly on the edge of the Galactic Empire's outer zone. Inside the control room, most officers were bored, half asleep. Watching empty screens filled with stars, only one officer was still fully alert. Young woman named Kale. She wasn't high-ranking, just a junior sensor analyst. But she took her work seriously. She sat at her console, eyes scanning the data lines. Looking for anything unusual? Most of the time, there was nothing, just space dust, cold rocks, and dying comets. But tonight, something blinked, just for a second. A tiny blip appeared on her radar screen, fast and sharp. Then it vanished again. She frowned, leaned forward, and rewound the data frame by frame. There it was, again, a small object entering their space, but it didn't come from any known route. It wasn't using any standard Empire warp gates or trade lanes, and it was moving very, very fast. Kale sat up straight and ran a quick check through the ship database. Every ship in the Empire civilian, military, diplomatic was listed there. She entered the object's size, speed, and flight pattern into the system. The result came back. Nitrogen monoxide match found. She tried again, this time using the pirate registry. Thinking maybe it was a smuggler ship, still nothing. No ID signal. No heat signature matching Empire engines. No ownership record. It was like the ship didn't exist. Kale felt a chill crawl down her back. She turned to the officer beside her, a bored man named Renlo. "Sir," she said, "there's an unknown object approaching Sector 12. Speed 3 times faster than standard cruisers." Renlo raised an eyebrow, but didn't look worried. "It's probably a glitch," he said lazily. "The scanners sometimes show garbage readings." But Kale shook her head. "No, sir. I've replayed it. It's real, and it's fast." Finally, he stood up and walked over, looking at the screen himself, when the blip appeared again, moving in a strange curved path. Faster than any known vessel, his face changed. "Call the commander," he said quietly, within minutes. Alarms started to echo in the command deck. High-ranking officers rushed in, demanding answers. The commander of the station, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 eyes, stared at the screen and frowned. "What ship is that?" he asked sharply. No one could answer. Kale said softly, "It's not in any of our records, sir, and its speed 4 times faster than standard interceptors." "Sir?" Accelerating gasps filled the room. The commander ordered, "Broadcast a command, ping force it to respond." They sent out the Imperial Override Signal, a type of message that all legal ships were programmed to reply to, but the screen stayed blank. No answer came. Kale's hands were shaking slightly as she whispered. "It ignored the override," the commander growled. "That's impossible." He ordered the long-range cannons to be aimed at the approaching object. "Lock on. If it crosses the warning zone, fire." But just as the weapons locked in, the object did something impossible. It turned mid-warp. Ships in warp could not turn. Once they jumped into warp drive, they had to exit before changing direction. But this ship curved smoothly, as if the laws of physics didn't apply to it. The room fell into complete silence. One of the older officers murmured, "That's not normal tech. That's something else." The ship then vanished again, like it folded into space and disappeared. No explosion, no exit trail, no signal, just gone. Everyone stared at the screen in disbelief. Kale looked at the commander. Did it cloak?" "No," he replied slowly. "It didn't cloak. It ... vanished." An order came from Central Control soon after. "Delete all data. Reported as sensor malfunction." Kale's mouth fell open. "They're covering it up." The commander nodded, clearly unhappy but powerless. Orders from above. "Forget what you saw, all of you." But Kale didn't forget. Late at night, while everyone was gone, she snuck back to the terminal. She copied the data logs onto a small crystal drive and hid it in her boot. She watched the playback one last time, slowly, frame by frame. There, just before it vanished, the object turned slightly, and in that instant, the scanner caught the faint shape of the vessel. It didn't look like any Empire ship. It looked smooth, dark, and oddly human. Kale stared at the image, heart pounding. Why would a human ship be here? Humans were extinct, erased from the galaxy thousands of years ago. She whispered to herself, "This changes everything." And somewhere out in space, far beyond the reach of any scanner, the ship that had no record, no signal, and no origin was watching, waiting, and heading deeper into Empire space. The message came in the middle of the night shift. It was a short distress call from a cargo fleet traveling through the outer rim of the Empire. The voice of the ship captain was shaky, filled with fear. "We see it. It's following us, not firing, just watching." Then, silence. No more words, no coordinates. No sign of what happened next, just dead air. The Empire's nearest battlecruiser was sent immediately. They expected to find pirate wreckage. Maybe a few bodies, maybe nothing at all. But what they found left them speechless. The entire cargo convoy had vanished, ships gone, crews gone. Not a single hull fragment remained. Only cargo containers floated in space, perfectly intact. As if gently placed there, nothing was stolen. Not even valuable minerals or tech, just missing people. And cold, quiet silence all around. Commander Relkar of the Imperial cruiser Iron Fang stood at the edge of the floating crates. He had fought in 5 border wars and never seen anything like this. He scanned the area again, looking for any radiation trails or signs of an ambush. There was nothing. Not a trace of weapons fire, no melted steel. No blood, just open, silent space, and a feeling of dread growing in his gut. One of his lieutenants whispered, "Sir, you think it's the same unknown ship?" Relkar said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. He had seen the report marked deleted but recovered by a contact about the strange blip near Sector 12. He didn't believe in ghosts, but something about this felt unnatural. He gave the order. "Call it in. Full report. Don't hold back anything." Back at Imperial Central Command, high-ranking officers gathered in a dark room. The air was heavy with tension. On the table, holograms floated cargo. Fleet names, dates, maps, missing crew lists. A tall woman in red armor stood at the front. Admiral Vorn, feared and respected throughout the Empire. She looked around the room, her voice sharp. "That's the 3rd Fleet this month," she said, "gone without a trace." A general responded, "Could be a rebel experiment." "Or cloaked ships." Vorn shook her head. "No. Rebels steal. This is different." Another officer stood, clearly nervous. "There's something else." "Survivors," he said quietly. Everyone turned to him. Surprised, he nodded. A merchant shuttle drifted back 2 days after its convoy disappeared. Just one man left alive. They quickly brought the survivor in a pale, trembling older man with wild eyes. He had seen something no one believed. He was barely able to speak at first, but then he described it, a black ship. Shaped like a blade, but smooth. "No lights, no markings," he said, voice breaking. "It didn't shoot. It didn't even come close. It just hovered there, watching us. Like it was studying us." They asked him what happened next. He just stared at the wall, whispering, and then everyone was gone. He didn't remember how or why. One moment the other ships were there, and then they weren't. Just empty space, and him floating alone back at a secret archive facility. A codebreaker named Lauren was quietly pulling old files. He had been tracking odd activity across Empire sectors, looking for patterns, and now he found something that chilled him, an ancient report over 3,000 years old, marked with the word Terran. The Terrans. The humans? A species once feared and then believed to be extinct. The record was short. Just a few lines from the time of the last war. It said, Terran forces retreated. Said they no longer wished to be part of the galaxy. All contact ended. But there were rumors, unconfirmed sightings. Strange signals from deep space. Now with this mystery ship appearing, it all felt connected. Lauren sent a hidden message to a contact in military command. If this ship is Terran, and it's back, we may be in danger, but the Empire wasn't ready to accept such a story. Instead, the officials tried to hide the truth from the public. They released fake news reports blaming pirates, space storms, engine failures. They wanted to calm the people, to avoid panic, but the fear was already spreading. Pilots were refusing to fly in the outer sectors. Merchants canceled their trade runs. Even bounty hunters turned down missions near the missing fleet zones. Everyone whispered the same thing. There's a ghost ship out there, watching, waiting. Admiral Vorn paced in her private chamber, reading through reports again and again. It didn't make sense. Why would a ship with that kind of power not attack directly? Why not demand tribute or launch an invasion? She zoomed in on the blurry image taken from the survivor's black box recording. It was faint, almost broken. But the shape of the ship was unlike anything built in the Empire. No wings, no flags, no standard design, only sleek, silent black. Then she noticed something else, a small detail others had missed. On the ship's hull, just for a moment, a flicker of a symbol. A symbol long forgotten, buried in history books and band records. A blue circle with a star in the center. The mark of old Earth. Vorn's breath caught. If this was true, then the humans were not gone. They were just hiding, improving, evolving out of sight, beyond reach. And now they had returned. But why? She tapped a command, calling her private security to lock down all files related to Terran history. She didn't want anyone else digging too deep yet, because if this ship was a message from Earth, then what came next might change the galaxy forever. The mysterious ship moved through the darkness of space like a shadow. No sound, no signals, no flashing lights inside. It was cold and quiet, but not empty. A man stood at the center of the control room, his face calm, his eyes focused. His name was Captain Gray, and he was human. He wore an old dark suit, tight to his body, with a strange blue symbol on the chest. His hair was silver, not from age, but from something else, something deep in his bones. The ship didn't have a crew. But it wasn't empty either. A soft, female-like voice spoke from the walls. From the floor, from everywhere. Captain Gray. The Empire is searching for us, it said gently. Gray nodded once. Let them. We're not hiding. The ship didn't have a normal engine. It moved through folded space, bending gravity like a toy. No Empire ship could follow. No scanner could lock on. It had no name painted on its side. Just smooth black metal that shimmered like liquid. Captain Gray sat in his seat, not to control the ship, but to connect with it. His mind linked directly to the ship's systems. They were one. The voice spoke again. Should we make contact, Captain? Gray didn't answer right away. He stared out into the stars. Remembering something from a long time ago, he wasn't just a pilot, he was a messenger. And his message was not yet ready to be delivered. He touched a glowing panel, and a soft hum filled the room. Screens floated around him, showing recent signals from Imperial broadcasts. He watched them. Silently panicked commanders, confused officers, and scared civilians. They didn't know what his ship was or where it came from. That was the point. The Empire had forgotten Earth. They thought humans were gone, wiped out, erased by time and war. But they were wrong. Humans had left by choice. After the Great Betrayal, when the Empire had turned against Earth, humans had vanished into the dark, refusing to fight more pointless wars. They had gone silent, hidden, deep in space, away from everything, and they had not wasted time. They had built something new. Something powerful, something patient. Captain Gray was part of a project called the Watchers. They were sent out one by one across the stars to keep an eye on the Empire, to wait and watch, not to attack, not to speak, unless the time came, unless the Empire crossed the line again. Now, after 3,000 years, Gray's ship had awakened because something had changed. The Empire was repeating its old sins, killing, conquering, hiding the truth, and Gray had seen enough. The voice of the ship asked softly, "Why not reveal ourselves now, Captain?" Gray stood and walked to the front window. "Because," he said, "they're not ready. And neither are we." He opened a small hidden compartment and pulled out an old, worn photo. It showed a woman and 2 children smiling, laughing, happy. It was a piece of his past, a reminder of why he was still here, why this mission mattered. The ship tilted slightly, responding to his unspoken thoughts. It didn't need buttons or commands. It listened to his mind, his feelings, his fears. It was alive in a way no empire ship could understand, made from Earth's last and best technology. Combined with human soul and purpose, suddenly, a light blinked on the main screen. An Empire patrol had entered nearby space. Scanning and searching, Gray sighed. "There." "Getting braver," the ship said. "Should we disable them?" "No," Gray replied. "Let them see us again." Just a little. The ship lowered its stealth shield for 1 second. Just long enough for the Empire sensors to catch a glimpse. A blip appeared on their radar, then vanished again. Enough to confuse them, to scare them enough to make them ask questions. On board the Empire patrol ship, panic spread. "Sir, we've spotted the unknown again." For just a second. "What direction?" the officer shouted, but there was no answer, just silence and fear. Because once again, they'd seen something they could not explain, something that should not exist, back in his ship. Captain Gray watched them scramble. He wasn't cruel. He didn't want to hurt anyone. But they needed to remember. The Empire had erased too much history, too many lies, too many graves with no names. Gray sat down again and closed his eyes. He was tired, but not weak. He remembered the old Earth leaders, the final council who had whispered their last words before going silent. "Do not wake the galaxy until it has learned to listen." Gray whispered to himself, "There, not listening yet." But soon, the ship floated into the shadows once more, silent, patient, watching, and as it did, the stars around it seemed to bend and tremble. Not because of power or weapons, but because they sensed something ancient had returned. Not for revenge, but for justice, and Captain Gray was just the beginning. On a silent moon near the Empire's core world, there stood a tall white tower. It was the Imperial Archive, home of all history, knowledge, and secrets inside. Only a few trusted people had access to the oldest records, most of the galaxies. Past had been rewritten, erased, or sealed by command. But one man, an old and quiet codebreaker named Lauren, had access to the forbidden files. Lauren had worked in the archives for 40 years. He didn't care for politics or war. He cared about the truth. And now? The truth was waking up from deep sleep. The reports of the ghost ship, the missing fleets, and the survivors' shaky words. They pointed to something he had studied long ago, a name almost forgotten: Terrans. Or as they were once called, humans. That word had been locked behind security walls for over 3,000 years. Lauren sat at his private station and typed a string of old commands. At first, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered. Red warning flashed. Classified Level 9 restriction, authorized eyes only. Lauren ignored it, typed another hidden code. The file opened slowly, like a door that hadn't moved in ages, and there it was, plain and simple. Final communication from Earth, cycle 0.091. Year 3271 Standard Time. The message was short but powerful. A voice recording, old and scratchy, played on the speakers. A female voice said, "To the Empire, we will no longer serve your wars. We do not want revenge. We want peace. So we are leaving. Do not follow. Do not seek us. If you do, you will regret it." Lauren leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. The Empire had hidden this message from the public. They told everyone that Earth had died during the final war, burned away by its own weapons, but that was a lie. Earth hadn't been destroyed. It had gone dark by choice. He looked at the final line in the file. Terran territory quarantined. No travel allowed. Contact forbidden. The Empire had sealed off their space and erased them from maps. They wanted to forget humans existed because deep down, they were afraid. Lauren copied the file onto a small memory crystal. He wrapped it in cloth and hid it in his coat. He had to show someone who would listen, but before he could leave, alarms rang through the archive tower. Red lights flashed. Soldiers ran down the halls. All terminals were shut down instantly. Over the speakers, a voice shouted, "Emergency. Protocol 5 activated. Unauthorized access detected." Lauren's heart sank. They knew. He grabbed the crystal and ran into the shadowed hallways. Somewhere in the tower, people were already searching for him. But Lauren had one advantage. He knew the archive better than anyone. He slipped through hidden doors and maintenance shafts. He had no weapon, but he had something stronger: the truth. Back at the Imperial Throne Palace, the Empress sat alone in her private chamber. Her face was pale, her eyes focused on a silent screen. In front of her was the leaked image of the mysterious ship caught during its brief appearance. Her advisors were outside, arguing over what to do. Some wanted to send more fleets. Others wanted to cover it up even harder. But the Empress remembered something her mother once told her, a bedtime story about ancient warriors from a blue world. They didn't have the biggest ships or strongest bodies, but they had something else: rage and fire that never gave up. She whispered to herself, "They're real, aren't they?" She tapped the intercom. "Bring Admiral Vorn. Now." Within minutes, the tall, steel-eyed admiral entered the room and bowed. "Majesty," she said, "you've seen the file." The Empress nodded slowly. "You told me once." "About Earth." Vorn lowered her head. "Yes, it wasn't a myth. I served near the Terran border as a junior officer. I saw their destruction firsthand. But I also saw what they left behind." The Empress stood and looked out the window. "We erased them." "But we didn't stop them," Vorn said quietly. "They chose silence, but not weakness." She placed a small disk on the table. "A patrol ship picked us up last night, broadcasted into deep space from the unknown vessel." The Empress pressed the button. A short message played in a deep human voice. "We remember. You may forget, but we never do." Then silence. No demands, no threats, just that haunting voice. The Empress shivered. It's not a warship. It's a warning. The same time, across the Empire, the leaked files began to spread. Lauren had escaped and passed the data to underground networks. Now, citizens in outer colonies were watching the old Earth video. Many were shocked. Some didn't even know humans had ever existed. Others felt a strange fear growing inside them. If humans had stayed silent for so long, what were they planning? In a small bar on a mining planet, a trader whispered to his crew, "They say the ghost ship is a human flying a living machine." Another man added, "They say the Empire tried to wipe them out, but failed." A third said in a low voice, "If they're back, we're all in trouble." And far away, beyond all scanners, the ship kept moving. Captain Gray sat in silence as his ship played the intercepted Empire broadcasts. He watched them hide the truth. Lie to their people, try to erase fear with force. But he could see through all of it. They're scared, he said softly, and they should be. He placed his hand on the glass where Earth's old symbol glowed faintly. This time, they'll remember. Inside the Empire's golden throne room, thick silence hung in the air like fog. The walls were tall and cold, decorated with glowing banners and statues of past emperors. But today, even those proud faces seemed to stare in fear. The Empress stood at the center, her silver robe flowing like water. Around her stood the High Council generals, admirals, ministers, all with stiff backs and pale faces. They were not used to fear, but today they were afraid. The Empress looked at each one slowly, her voice calm but sharp. You've all read the reports. You've all seen the footage. No one spoke. She pointed to a glowing screen beside her throne. On it, the shadowy shape of the unknown ship floated in stillness, blurry but unmistakable. This ship has no ID, no registry, and yet it moves. Like a god, she said. And now we have proof it is Terran. One of the older generals stepped forward. Your Majesty, humans are extinct. This must be a trick. Admiral Vorn's cold voice cut in. I saw them years ago. They are not extinct. They chose to disappear. Another official added nervously, and now they're back. But why now? No one had the answer. The Empress sat down slowly and folded her hands. We tried to erase them. Now they've returned. What do we do? The room filled with whispered ideas. Some wanted to send more ships. Others said to open peace talks. But then a junior officer ran into the throne room, panting, eyes wide with fear. He bowed quickly and said, Urgent news, Your Majesty. One of our colonies on the outer rim has been attacked. Gasps echoed in the chamber. Pirates? Asked a counselor. No, Majesty, the officer said, trembling. Something else. Something fast. And silent, he handed over a data. Crystal, the Empress placed it into the projector, and the room turned dark as the recording played. The footage showed a peaceful Colonus Mall, quiet, with mining workers and families. Then, suddenly, a black shadow passed through the sky. No weapons fired, no explosions, just a wave of light. And then all machines stopped working. Ships dropped to the ground, lights went out, communications died. And then the video ended. Only the Empire's logo remained on the screen, flashing. Red, they disabled an entire colony, someone whispered. They could have destroyed it, said another, but they didn't. They just stopped everything. Admiral Vorn frowned. It was a warning. The Empress stood again. Voice firm now. Then we must respond. Send a diplomat. The room went quiet. No one volunteered. Finally, one old ambassador stepped forward. I will go. I knew humans once, when I was young. Maybe they'll listen, the Empress nodded. You'll leave tonight. Take an unarmed ship. Show respect. The ambassador's ship left at sunset, shining like a silver dove through the stars. They followed the last known path of the Terran vessel, broadcasting peaceful messages in Old Earth languages. For 2 days, there was no reply. Then, finally, a voice answered, calm, deep human, do not follow. Turn back. This is your final chance. The ambassador answered politely, begging for peace, offering dialogue. The voice repeated, turn back. The ship vanished from the Empire's tracking systems just minutes later. No explosion, no distress. Signal, gone, just like the others a day later. A pod was dropped into orbit above the Empire's capital. It drifted down slowly, glowing softly like a falling star. Inside was the ambassador alive, but unconscious. He was missing his memory of the trip, but his hands held a message crystal. They placed it in the throne room viewer, and once again the human voice spoke. We did not ask for war. We asked for silence. You broke it. If you continue to push, we will respond. This is your last warning. The council exploded with arguments. We must strike first. One general shouted, "We don't even know where to strike." Another cried. One scientist whispered, "Their ship can bend space. We can't even chase it." The Empress said nothing, just stared at the screen. It showed the human symbol again, a blue circle with a single white star in the center, pulsing slowly. It was the sign of Earth, of a world they thought had burned to ash. In secret, panic spread through the upper ranks of the Empire. Some high-ranking officers prepared to escape. Others tried to contact hidden allies across the stars. Even the civilian population had started whispering about the return of the Terrans. Children played games pretending to be human pilots. Old men told stories of ancient Earth warriors who never surrendered. And yet, no one truly understood what was coming, because far beyond their reach, in a quiet part of space, the Terran ship waited in silence. Captain Gray stood inside, listening to everything, the messages, the fear, the lies. He said nothing, his eyes focused on the stars. The ship's voice asked gently. They sent an envoy. Why not meet them properly? Gray replied. Because they haven't learned. They think we're bluffing. The ship was quiet for a moment, then asked, "And when they do?" Gray answered without blinking. "Then we show them what silence has built." The ship tilted forward slightly, preparing for its next move. It wasn't here for fun, or glory, or war. It was here because history needed to remember something it had buried too deep, that even after thousands of years, humans never forget. Across the galaxy, everything went silent for 12 minutes. No one knew why. The Empire's strongest signals stopped working. No calls, no commands, no alerts. The holoscreens turned black. Starships froze in space, and satellites lost control. For 12 long minutes, time felt frozen. People looked at each other in fear, not knowing what was happening. Then, all at once, the systems came back on. But now, every single screen, every single device showed one thing only. You erased. US, you failed. We remember. The message blinked again and again. Some tried to turn it off, but they couldn't. It was everywhere, from city walls to wrist comms, from battleships to children's toys. Even the Empress's private chamber displayed the message in large red letters. The entire Empire stared at the words in shocked silence. The humans had spoken to all of them at once, and they made sure everyone saw it. Panic exploded like fire across the Empire. People rushed into the streets, asking questions, demanding answers. In outer colonies, miners dropped their tools and stared at the sky. In schools, teachers tried to calm the children as the same message flashed behind them. Soldiers stood frozen in place, waiting for new orders that weren't coming. The Empire's perfect control was suddenly broken by 12 minutes of silence and one terrifying message. On the Empire's capital world, the High Council gathered again. Many looked pale, sweaty, shaking. The Empress stood tall, but her eyes showed fear. Admiral Vorn stepped forward and said, "They could have attacked." But instead, they sent a warning. One general growled, "We must strike now, for they send more threats." But Vorn replied coldly, "And strike what? A ship we can't track? A planet we can't find?" The room went quiet. Just then, another signal came in. But this one wasn't a hacket, was a direct broadcast. The screens lit up with the image of the Terran ship, black and silent, floating in space, and then a voice, clear and calm, spoke again. "We aren't here for war. But we will not be ignored. You know what you did." The council members looked at each other nervously. The Empress stared at the image and whispered, "Why now? After all this time?" Admiral Vorn answered, "Because we started repeating the past." Then came even worse news. A new report was delivered straight into the throne room. One of the Empire's military fleets had destroyed a neutral colony near the border. It was supposed to be a quiet attack, hidden from public view, but someone leaked it. And now the whole galaxy was watching. The Empire tried to explain it as a mistake, but the Terran ship didn't wait for an excuse. Later that day, a new object entered orbit above the capital planet. It wasn't a weapon, it was a capsule. Inside, it was a man and old Imperial admiral once thought dead, missing since the human war. He was alive, but weak, barely breathing, when doctors checked his brain. They found something strange, traces of advanced healing technology far beyond what the Empire had. The man whispered only one thing before falling asleep. They never left. They only evolved. Now the truth could no longer be hidden. The public demanded answers. The media exploded with stories. Even Empire loyalists started questioning everything they had been told. A new fear spread, not of war, but of being. The people began asking if humans were always out there. What else has the Empire hidden from us? In secret, small rebel groups began to rise again, but this time they weren't trying to overthrow the Empire. They were trying to find the humans. Some wanted to ask for help, others just wanted the truth, and far in the shadows, Captain Gray was watching it all, inside his ship. Gray stood at the viewing window, his face calm. The ship's voice spoke softly. "You sent the message. The Empire is in chaos. Should we move now?" Gray shook his head. "Not yet. We still give them a choice," the ship replied. "They destroyed a colony. They won't stop." Gray looked tired. "I know. But some of them are different now. I've seen the changes. Not all of them deserve what's coming." He sat down and stared at a small screen showing people from the outer colonies. A mother crying while hugging her child. Miners refusing to load weapons onto Empire ships. A young girl painting Earth symbol on a wall with glowing blue paint. Captain Gray whispered, "Maybe, just maybe, there's hope." But hope was fading fast, because in another part of the galaxy, a secret meeting was taking place. High-ranking Empire leaders, angry and afraid, had formed a shadow group. They were planning to strike against this time, against a planet rumored to be helping humans. They believed power was the only answer. They didn't care if it meant waking the full force of Terran fire, and they didn't know. Captain Gray was already listening. He watched their plan unfold on a secret screen, and his hands slowly clenched into fists. He had held back long enough. He had warned them again and again. But now they were crossing the line. The ship's voice asked one last time, "If they cross it, what do we do?" Gray didn't blink, didn't hesitate. He said only one word. "Then we respond." The attack happened at dawn on a peaceful planet called Ralos. It was small, quiet, and home to farmers, traders, and a few scientists. It had no weapons, no army, no reason to be attacked. But the Empire believed this planet was secretly helping humans, so they decided to make an example of it. Without warning, 3 Empire warships entered Ralos' orbit. They didn't ask questions, didn't give time to surrender. They opened fire on power stations, water plants, and communication towers. People screamed and ran as buildings collapsed and homes burned. They were not soldiers, they were families. Children, elders, by the time the attack ended. Half the planet was silent, and the sky above Ralos was filled with smoke. The Empire tried to hide what they had done. They called it a mistake, blaming rebels, saying the planet had hidden weapons, but a local child had recorded everything. On a small personal camera, the footage leaked online, spreading like fire. The entire galaxy saw what really happened, innocent people killed by fear, not justice. And in that moment, something changed. The Terran ship, still hidden in the dark edges of space, received the signal. Captain Gray watched the video in silence. The screen showed a crying woman holding her burned child. A group of farmers digging through rubble with their bare hands, and soldiers walking away without guilt. Gray's jaw tightened, and his eyes darkened. The ship's voice asked softly, "They crossed the line." He whispered back, "Yes, and now they'll pay." He stood at the center of the ship, placed his hand on the command console. The entire vessel lit up with blue energy. For the first time in 3,000 years, the full system was activated. The ship's voice changed deeper, louder, more. Powerful primary weapons unlocked. Earth protocol engaged. But Gray wasn't finished. He walked to a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out a silver key. He placed it into a slot, turned it slowly, and a strange sound echoed through the ship, somewhere far away, in a corner of deep space. Others began to wake across the galaxy. Small hidden ship-staring watchers like Grab began to glow. Each one received the same signal, a message sent in an old human code. Earth remembers. The line has been crossed. Respond. In quiet silence, dozens of Terran ships came to life. Some had been hiding in asteroid fields, others buried under moon dust. They had waited for centuries without moving. Now they moved together, fast, quiet, angry, back in the Empire. Panic hit hard. Reports came in from all sectors, strange ships appearing out of nowhere. Stations losing control. Some ships stopped working without warning shields dropped. Engines froze, weapons jammed. No. Terran's ship had fired a single shot, but they were winning. Empire officers didn't understand what was happening. All they saw were black ships. And chaos inside the throne palace. The Empress stood surrounded by terrified officials. Admiral Vorn walked in quickly, her face hard. "Majesty," she said, "they've activated something. We're losing ships without being touched." The Empress stared at the map in front of her, red dots vanishing one after another. She asked, "Can we talk to them?" Vorn replied, "They're not answering. I think we had our chance, and we wasted it." A new message appeared on every Empire screen. It showed Captain Gray standing inside his ship, eyes filled with fire. His voice was steady and cold. "You were warned. You were given a chance. You chose blood. Now we choose truth." He paused for a moment, then said the final words. "This ends today." On the edge of Empire space, the Terran fleet gathered. Black, silent, glowing ships surrounded the main Empire command station. They didn't fire missiles or lasers. Instead, they sent out a pulse-pure energy, invisible, silent, but unstoppable. It shut down every Empire system in seconds. No weapons worked, no ships moved. No signals escaped. For the first time in history, the Empire was blind and helpless. Captain Gray's ship moved forward alone, slow and calm. It entered the Empire's capital zone without being stopped. No one could stop it. He wasn't here to destroy cities or wipe out people. He was here for something more powerful, to end the fear, the lies, the control. His ship hovered above the throne palace. And then a beam of soft blue light came down. A single capsule dropped from the ship and landed gently in the palace square. Guards rushed forward but stopped when the capsule opened. Inside was a small device. A voice came out of it, Gray's voice. "You can choose war, and we will erase your armies. You can choose lies, and we will expose every secret. Or you can choose peace. Stand down. Let your people be free. This is your last decision." The Empress listened to the message, standing in silence. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from realization. She turned to Admiral Vorn and said, "He's not here to rule us. He's here to make sure we don't destroy ourselves." Vorn nodded. "And if we don't listen, he'll finish what Earth started." Captain Gray watched from above, waiting, not with hate in his heart, but with sorrow. He had seen too many worlds fall. Too many chances wasted. He had come not to conquer, but to give one last chance to a broken galaxy. And the final moment was near. The palace was quiet. The stars above the capital planet had never looked so still. Everyone across the empire watched their screens in silence. No one knew what the Empress would do next. Would she fight back or surrender? The message from the human ship still echoed in every mind. You can choose war, or you can choose peace. The Empress stood in front of the large crystal window. Below her, the black Terran ship hovered gently. Glowing like a ghost, it had done no harm but she knew it could, and she knew that if she made the wrong choice, this ship wouldn't come alone next time. It would bring others. And those others would not give a second warning. She took a long breath and called Admiral Vorn to her side. I've ruled this empire since I was 16, she whispered, but I've never felt powerless. Until today, Vorn stood quietly, then said, Majesty, maybe power was the problem all along. The Empress closed her eyes, thinking of all the people who had suffered under her rule, the lies they told, the colonies they crushed, the truths they erased. For years, she thought strength was survival, but now, a silent ship had shattered. Her illusion with no weapons at all. Only truth. Open a channel, she said finally, to the Terran ship. The command center quickly connected the signal. Across space, inside the black vessel, Captain Gray stood calmly as her image appeared. Before him, he said nothing, only waited. The Empress looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see an enemy. She saw history, pain, and something deeper hope. She spoke softly. We have made mistakes. Too many. Gray didn't reply. She continued, we erased your people. We silenced your past. We tried to forget you. But you didn't forget us. Gray finally spoke. No, we remember everything. The Empress lowered her head, then let us remember too. Not with war, but with truth. There was a long silence. Then Gray said, do you accept responsibility? Her voice trembled. Yes. Will you change? I will try. And if you don't? The Empress looked straight at him, then stop us. Gray watched her carefully. She was telling the truth, not because she feared him, but because she finally understood. He nodded once. I accept your choice. Outside the palace, the Terran ship slowly turned, its engines lit with blue light. But there was no sound. It began to rise into the sky, higher and higher, until it was just a dot among the stars. Then, with a soft shimmer, it vanished, gone without. War without death, only a warning left behind. But that was not the end. Moments later, hidden receivers across the galaxy began to buzz. Messages poured in encrypted old, ancient even. Each one from a different Terran vessel. Some were deep under oceans, others in desert caves. They had all been waiting, watching, and now they had been awakened by Gray's signal. One by one, these ships sent their own broadcasts, not to attack, but to teach. They revealed records of the Empire's past crimes wars, betrayals, assassinations, hidden files. Everything the Empire had tried to bury was now public, across the galaxy. People gathered to watch the truth unfold. It was painful, but freeing. No more lies. On one planet, a former soldier wept as he saw proof of the real reason his unit was wiped out. On another, a girl hugged her father after learning he had once saved a Terran child, not betrayed it in deep space, even. Some pirates lowered their weapons. The truth had changed everything. And far away, in his ship, Captain Gray watched it all. He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just breathed. The mission was complete. He had reminded the galaxy of what they had tried to erase, that humans were still here, not to rule, not to destroy, but to hold up a mirror. Gray stood at the window. Looking at the stars, the ship's voice spoke quietly. Where now, Captain? He replied, somewhere quiet, until they forget again. The ship asked, "And if they don't?" Gray answered, "Then maybe, just maybe, they've changed for good." He walked away from the controls, letting the ship float peacefully. He didn't need to guide it. It understood him. It had his memories, his thoughts, his heart. It was part of him. And he was part of something older than war, something human, and in that final moment, before the ship folded into space and disappeared again, one last message blinked on every screen across the galaxy. You feared a ghost. Now meet the fleet. But no war came, no bombs, no fire, no screams, just quiet, because this time the galaxy had chosen something else. It had chosen to listen, and the humans, they had finally been heard.